Hello, everybody on Facebook, in our podcast, on YouTube. My name is Josh Oakes with smartsocial.com. You know that I travel the country teaching students how to be light, bright, and polite online, and I teach them how to shine online. But there's so much more to all of this. Today, I have a really unique guest, and I'm honored to get the chance to talk with her about something that she's built with her co-founder, and I think it's something that hits home with all of us. We're going to talk about anxiety today. We're going to talk about how it's cool to talk about, but it's not something cool to experience. And we're going to bring that to light. Now, for me, I'm not a psychologist or a licensed professional in any way. I'm more of a cheerleader that brings some of the best experts to light so that they can teach you what they've learned. And today we're going to do that as well. Today, I'm so honored to talk about this new movie called Angst. And Angst talks about anxiety. I have Sheila Andreen. She is coming at us live from Washington, from the Seattle area. Sheila, welcome to the video, and please tell us a little bit about the movie Angst, please.
Hi, well, thanks for having us. Angst is a movie, it just came out about 3.5 weeks ago. It's a documentary basically created to break the stigma around anxiety. That's what we want to do. We want to get people talking. We want to normalize the conversation around mental health, and we really want to start with kids and families, but this movie is for all of us. I wanted to make this film. A friend of mine had, I actually take out other films into the world in these community screenings in schools and corporations around the world, whether it's Finding Kind, which is about bullying and the response is kindness, or if it's Empowerment Project, which is about ordinary women who do such extraordinary things because we are all extraordinary, with role models right there at our fingertips, or Screenagers, which is about growing up in the digital age, and Angst, which is really, it's about mental health. A friend of mine had asked me to make a movie about mental health, and I basically said no. I didn't know how to approach the topic. I didn't know how I was going to make a movie for like 8-year-olds and up that would bring lots of people together in a room to want to talk about it. It could be light and filled with hope. And I just didn't see how you do that with mental health. But then she actually died by suicide. And I realized that I needed to make a movie about mental health. And so Angst is the product of that mission. And it is light, it is hopeful, it has got resources, and it honors our mission at the IndieFlix Foundation, which is to change the world within a minute of viewing. So it gives you tools and awareness. And
that's amazing. So you're also pretty popular in our circles, the digital safety circle, because of Screenagers. And educators that are watching this, maybe some parents know that Screenagers is you do a community viewing of that, where it talks about screens and teenagers. I've heard great things about it. People all over the country, before I travel to a school, they've usually watched Screenagers, which I think is neat. Talk to us about why you do the community thing, and then let's talk a little bit more about Angst and some of the things that you've learned. I want to talk about anxiety versus an anxiety disorder after we talk about the community screening. So tell me about how you screen this thing.
Sure. So, it all started with a little movie called Finding Kind, which Lauren Paul and Molly Thompson made. It's about bullying, and I watched it as a kid I watched it in my living room by myself, and it was still a rough cut. And the first thing I wanted to do was to turn to someone and talk about it. And I had been bullied as a kid, and it made me want to connect and talk to people. And so we actually started screening it in schools, and we saw the transformative effect it had on schools. And then we did some testing, like with Empowerment Project, we did some, basically you could watch it online, but then when you watch it offline, we actually move the needle. That's where transformation takes place. And so I realized with anxiety in particular and mental health, it's such a taboo topic. Nobody wants to talk about it because of the stigma, because you don't want to be put in a box or labeled. So the only way that we're going to truly move the needle and help to normalize the conversation is we have to sit shoulder to shoulder in our communities, in the gymnasium at your school or the cafeteria or the assembly hall, and witness it together, have a conversation, and then you have a pass to talk about it at the bank, on the soccer field, at the school dance. You get to, suddenly it's okay to talk about it because you all were in that room together talking about it. And the more you talk about it, the more you can talk about it.
Yeah, that's so true. So I love that you bring it to schools and you give schools an opportunity to show it on a parent night, a student night, whatever the topic is, the content is. So that's really great.
And a really important note is that this particular film is made specifically under an hour, so it can be watched during classroom periods as well.
Terrific.
I want
That's that.
everybody to see this.
Yeah, you want to design it so that it can work with people's lives. I love that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. Michael Phelps is featured in this film, which I think is neat because he, an extreme athlete, one that we've never seen in the whole world, more medals than anybody in the world when it comes to Olympics. He talks a little bit about what he went through and why he's in the film. Talk to us about anxiety versus an anxiety disorder. What did you find in this film?
It's really interesting. Everyone involved with the film, the director, Matt Scarrett, my co-producer, my producing partner, Karen Gornick, and Sarah Moga, like we all have our own sort of touch points with anxiety or mental health. So it's been a great experience, just the journey of making the film. Everybody has anxiety. It's actually really healthy. It's what has kept us alive, but because of technology and maybe social media and just all the inundation of information, I think that anxiety is on the rise. That's one of the things we learned. And there's this point, like a tipping point. We don't have a vocabulary around how to deal with anxiety. We don't have some sort of a practice, or it's not an open conversation. So now so many people, I think the median age of discovering that kids are getting anxiety is age 7. And a third of the population, I think if I'm getting this right, has I better not say it actually, because I'm not clear on it. I don't want to butcher that thing. I'm just a filmmaker. I'm not a licensed therapist or an expert. And I'm just, as I always say to people, we just mirror back what we see. But everyone has anxieties. It's just that there's a tipping point. Some people have it more, and we need to learn how to be able to practice prevention, self-care, well-being at an early age so we don't have to go there. That's the key.
Yeah, I think it's a really good, healthy talk. In a past podcast episode and video, we featured an MD, one of my good friends, talking about the sex talk with kids. And she said, you got to have it earlier and do it. And I think it really is. It's awkward at first, and then all of a sudden it's super, super healthy and something we all need to do. And I've had anxiety. I've run for city council in Southern California, and people will pick on you, right, when you're running for public office. And I realized I'm way too sensitive. But anxiety can be both good and bad. It's been difficult and fun at the same time. Talk to us about the above the neck treatment, the way the world sees treating above the neck disorders versus below the neck when you go to the doctor. Can you talk to us about what you've learned there?
Oh my gosh. I learned so much that I feel like I know nothing because there's so much to know. Dr. Jerry Bubrick, who's a PhD, specializes in anxiety disorders at the Child Mind Institute, speaks to that in the film, and basically how literally from the neck up, they're just completely viewed differently and treated differently than from the neck down. That's just so much more the norm to go in. Like even here in Seattle at the Harborview Medical Center, it's one of the best trauma emergency rooms in the country. But if you go in there for mental health, they don't have a way to triage that, or an early psychotic situation. They don't know how to treat anxiety. So they're actually doing a whole movement to create that ability to treat in the emergency rooms, because it seems to be happening more and more often. And I think it is a little bit, are we more aware? Yes. Do we have more ability to track and measure? Yes. Are we actually starting to talk about it more? Yes. So it is that, it's always been there, but I do think that it is also on the rise, especially in young people, because their brains aren't as developed and they're dealing with the social media. Like they turn on their phones and it's boom, boom, boom. They're just inundated with all of this stuff. So how are they supposed to process it all? They kind of go into survival mode. And so you can understand why, they're worried about college at 3rd grade. It's too much. So we need to step back, a little mindfulness, like all of the movies I get involved with. And this one in particular is probably the closest to me. It was an idea that I came up with based on my friend. And, the goal is that we walk away with balance in our lives, and that my hope is that we will figure out a way to connect more as human beings, to be there for each other, to sort of grow that social emotional aspect.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a really big deal. And I think it is growing, and hopefully it is becoming cooler to talk about. because we all go through it. Let's talk just real quick about the movie one more time. Tell me kind of one of the things that the movie challenges people to talk about when it comes to anxiety. Those of you that are joining us live right now, we're talking about with the CEO and founder of a company that produced Angst, the movie, a movie that teaches students and parents how to dialogue about anxiety and the differences between the two and how important it is. We all deal with it, whether you have anxiety before you go on stage in front of 1,000 students, which can be good anxiety, or whether you have bad anxiety that we talk about with students with these devices that we give them access to, and how it can just bully them over the weekend like never before. Talk to us about one more shocking thing that you learned as opening up, and not as a therapist, because you're obviously not one of those, but what did you learn in this film that you didn't know before it?
Well, I learned a lot of really cool little tools and resources, some little tricks. Like you can hold, for instance, it turns out a lot of people have anxiety attacks. I personally have had a couple of anxiety attacks. I didn't know what they were. I thought I was maybe having a heart attack or something like that. But now that I know what it is, you can grab ice cubes, and that really helps. You can't help but think about how cold your hands are. But I also think it changes the brain waves, right? Talking is a really powerful way. And of course, it's the last thing you want to do. But you have to use a motor function. You have to make a sound, and you have to form a sentence. Snapping is really powerful to help calm the body. Turning your hands like this or like this, like however you want to do it, or focusing near, focusing far, focusing near, focusing far, or music, art, journaling. And as much as I would say we don't want to pick up our devices, you know what? Texting a friend is not a bad thing to do. Anything that helps to get your mind out of that racing, panic, survival mode, to move the brain waves to the frontal lobe, to the executive function of the brain. It's like a muscle, and you can learn. I mean, Inside Out was a great movie that taught us that who's sitting at the controls, right? Like, we have the ability to change our own brains. The neuroplasticity is real, as we say in the movie. Mindfulness is really helpful. If you are, listening to the sounds in the room, whether it's the traffic on the bridge far away or the bird in the tree up above, even for a minute, I think just changes all your biorhythms. And those tools are free, and they're right with you all the time. So we have the ability to do this. And as Michael Phelps says in the film, we have these tools. Like, we have what it takes to get through it, but we forget that it's there. And we need to practice it so that we can reach for it on autopilot, right? And that we can also be there for each other. There's one kid in the film who I just love, and he always says, I think it's Nate, who says, sometimes my fear gets so bad, and so I call my friend, and she's like, well, why? And he says, it's because of this. And she goes, well, why? And he says, after a few whys, my fear is so broken down that it just feels kind of silly to begin with. And he's through it. I mean,
This is so great.
That we don't need to, honestly, therapy is great, but how sustainable is it, right?
Yeah.
Finding the right person, talking to a stranger until you get to know them. We can be there for ourselves. And that's one of the first things that the movie talks about is, let's just open it up and start talking. Let's break that stigma, because we all have it. So don't think that by talking about it, you're put in a bucket.
Yeah, and there's nothing uncool about talking about your feelings, especially these days when bullying used to just happen in the schoolyard. Every principal in the country I talk to tells the students that in my day, but really students don't know about that day. It happens over the weekend. It happens when you're home. It happens on Instagram when there's a party and you're not invited and everybody's liking it, and it's shown so that you're not a part of that group right? And it causes anxiety with kids all over. So I love what you've done. I love the dialogue you've started, the resources you're kind of creating, and just those simple tools about snapping. Ice cubes, never heard of that. I think that's all. It's really neat, and it can help somebody, right? There's a really big deal out there We talk, we have a parent app guide. Those of you that are listening at smartsocial.com, we have one of the most robust app guides that says, here's the green zone apps, the internet's not safe, but these are the apps that you should start your kids on when they're 14 and above and ready to be online in a positive way. Here's the gray zone apps, Snapchat and a few other ones live there. This is where you really got to be with your kids. If you're going to be, they are dying to be on these, but something bad could go wrong in the gray zone. So just be careful. You can have family time there, but be there with them. And then the red zone, and the red zone is full of anxiety apps, anonymous apps, predators. And this is where you got to really be with your students. And this is where it creates it. And as we talk to parents nationwide, they realize that the dialogue is the one thing that protects their kids. There is no safety app out there that's going to protect your child like you will. You'll wake up at 3 a.m. and go pick your kid up. There is no, unfortunately, no big company is going to do that for you. So we're always reminding, start with a dialogue. I love this dialogue that you've created here. So thank you. And people can learn more about you by going to indieflix.com. Is that correct?
You can, a quicker way to go is go to angstmovie.com. You can also get there through indieflix.com. It's only available in community screenings right now around the world. And it comes with we have marketing tools, ways for you to help fill your community, in the space. But also it comes with the moderator's guide, the discussion points, and we're creating a curriculum and a social emotional program that comes with it. It's all part of the package because we don't want to just come in, have a screening and a great conversation and leave. We want to leave you with materials that keep the conversation going.
Yeah, that's really terrific. Thanks for joining us here today. Those of you that are watching, you can learn more as well. And you've seen this probably on smartsocial.com and as well as in Parent University, where we believe in making you the smartest parent in the room by starting that dialogue and showing you how Snapchat works, Instagram works, and getting you going on the apps where your kids are already hanging out so that you're not pushing that onto them, but rather starting a dialogue to protect them. Thanks everybody for watching here today. And thank you to you for joining us here today. We'll see you all very soon. Have a great day.